Ooh, are you in for a treat today? I'm going to be ranking all 50 of my current eyeshadow palettes from worst to best. No tea, no shades, just how it is. So if you want to see what my current collection is and my thoughts on all of them, keep on watching. Okay, so I'm very excited about this video and I've seen people do this in the past and I was like, my turn, let's get started. So starting at the very bottom at number 50, we have the So Jada palette from Kathleen Lights and ColourPop. This automatically goes to the bottom because it's ColourPop and ColourPop likes to absolutely do people dirty and I'm not a fan. So colors are nice. Fallout was very extreme, but they do blend nicely. Next we have the ColourPop custom palette that I made. I had this years ago. It's very mediocre, like I don't reach for it whatsoever. And again, ColourPop gets put to the bottom because they screw people over. Then we have their newer High Tide palette, pretty colors. Also at the bottom of the list for obviously previously stated reasons. And the Fine Feathered palette, love the colors, but they stain like a mofo. Up next we have the Nikki Tutorials X Beauty Bay collaboration. I really liked this palette when it came out. As I've used other palettes, I've started to like this less. The formula isn't the best, and the shimmers, although pigmented, turn into like mush, like the one at the top, turns into mush, and it's very hard to manipulate, and the blending could be a little bit better with the shadows. They're a little patchy. Next, from Bella & Co., which is a fantastic indie brand, we have the Up & Smoke palette. I like this palette because it's affordable. There are nice shades to choose from. It comes with a mirror, of course, but the formula could be a little bit better. But again, they're indie brand, so like, props to them for doing a great job regardless. The next few are from Gourmand Girls Cosmetics. This is the Sugar Shop palette. It's really pretty, but it's just not something that I reach for often. The next one is the Spectra palette. So this one is pretty. Again, the colors are nice, but I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes that have the same colors and the formulas are just better. Next up, we have the Vivacious palette. Now this palette, again, is really pretty, but the pans are huge, so you don't have as many colors to choose from, and the formula is a little bit patchy. Exquisite. This also is Gourmand Girls Cosmetics. Again, really pretty, but I have all of these shades in numerous palettes. Next up from Ferocious Beauty, we have Darkness Rising. This palette is gorgeous, and also just to note, this shadow is named after me. I was also a campaign model for them. Hopefully you saw it. If you didn't, go check it out. Up next, we have our first Makeup Geek palette. So I love all things Makeup Geek, also wearing their lashes today. So this palette ends up being lower on the list just because these are the soft focus shadows, so they're very pastel, very soft colors. And obviously I like a little more of a bold moment, but they perform beautifully just like all Makeup Geek shadows do. Next up, we have the Norvine, a palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I like this palette, but just something about the layout of this and just the overall structure of this palette, I just don't love this. I don't like the shape, I don't like the layout, I don't like it. And the pans are so tiny, but the shadows that I have used performed pretty well. Next up, we have Morphe, the 10G GLSEN palette. Now this is lower on the list just because this is a glitter and shimmer palette, and that's nice, but like you can only do so much with it. But the colors are pretty. They are just difficult to get out of the pans. You kind of have to scoop them out. Next up, we have an eyeshadow palette from Sigma Beauty. This is their Ivy eyeshadow palette. I like this. I like the color story. It's just very limited for me personally as far as the types of looks that I could do with it. Next, we have another Makeup Geek palette. This one is a custom palette, so I really like this obviously because I'm the one that picked the colors out and they perform beautifully. This shadow right here is called Pegasus. It's one of my all-time favorite eyeshadows. Next up, we have the Pure X Raw Beauty Christy palette. This like kind of broke the internet when we were all shopping for it. I love this palette because it's dual-sided, so it has 9 colorful shadows on this side. Flip it over and it has 9 neutral shadows on this side. Next, to finish up this first stack of palettes, we have the Jeffree Star Cosmetics Conspiracy palette. I liked this palette when I first bought it just because it was like taking on the internet and we had the series on YouTube and it was awesome. But when you actually use it, the formula and the performance for me was very lackluster. This yellow was probably the worst shadow I've ever used. The fallout was just insane and the shadows were very patchy. I really did like the silver shadow right here, Diet Cola, and I also really liked Not a Fact. Those are 2 of my favorite colors from this palette. Okay, let's start stack number 2 of 4. And I'm trying to talk quickly and not linger on every single palette just because this video would be an hour long and we don't got time for that. I just want to get through them and so you can see my thoughts and opinions on all of these. So let's continue. Next up, we have the Morphe 39L Hit the Lights palette. This palette is gigantic, like, hello. So when you open it up, it looks like this. It's literally massive. When I got this palette, I was obsessed. I especially love the shimmer right here, the silver. It's incredible. There are like silk shadows that you can like, there are toppers that you apply on top of your shimmers, and it's just, it's a really pretty palette. I do think it's kind of random, but it is what it is. There are definitely lots of options, and I think the performance was pretty good. Next, we have the Morphe X Nikita Dragon palette. When I, again, bought this, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but then I never reached for it again. There was definitely a lot of hype over it, and it kind of fell flat compared to the amount of hype it was getting. I Again, don't really reach for it, but the color story is pretty. Next, we have the Jeffree Star Cosmetics Bloodlust palette. I just want to note that any and all Jeffree Star Cosmetics products, as far as the packaging, is just insane. Literally, there's nothing on the market like it. Nobody does what he does when it comes to the packaging, so that'll always be an A++ in my book. So when you open it up, the color story is nice. It was not what people were expecting, and that's fine, because if you don't want it, don't buy it. It's literally makeup and it's that simple. I liked the formula, and I also really liked the shimmers because it was a new, like, wet formula, so I really like that. Overall, I don't grab this palette often, even though I love purple shadows, just because I don't feel like I have a lot of options when it comes to this, so I don't like combining palettes. Next, we have the Morphe Live with Love palette. Love this because it's rainbow and I love rainbow. I think I used this palette maybe twice and then I never grabbed it again. I definitely have too many eyeshadow palettes, and I try to keep the ones that I actively use in the top of my vanity and my drawers, and the rest are kind of put away, but I definitely need to get rid of some of these palettes. So if you see some of these that are on like the lower end of the list that you might want, please let me know in the comments below. If you want them like used, of course, I'll sanitize them like I always do, of course, and just ship them out to you because I don't like wasting things. Next, we have the Morphe Sour Patch Kids eyeshadow palette. That is actually what I'm using on the eyes today. This palette is fantastic. They did such a good job with this whole collection. Like the setting spray, side note, smells like watermelon and it's literally perfect, but it's super colorful, vibrant, bright, beautiful. The color story is perfect. It's exactly what you would expect it to be. The performance, as you can see, was very, very good. Everything blended like a dream. The colors were, some of them were more pigmented than others. Some needed to build it up, but overall it was a great palette. Next, we have the Jeffree Star Cosmetics Alien palette. Again, the packaging is phenomenal. Like, when do you see an alien? Never. The inside, cool. I got this when I first started in makeup and I thought this was revolutionary with the formula. Now, knowing what I know now, I know that it's not, but at the end of the day, the formula is still good. The shade Alien is my favorite from this palette. Next, we have another Jeffree Star Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. This is the Blue Blood palette. I wonder how many times I'll say the word eyeshadow palette or palette in this video. Anyway, again, I loved this when it first came out. It was when I was newer to makeup, so I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing to ever grace my eyeballs. Again, now, not so much. There's a lot of fallout with some of these shadows, which is to be expected with the colors, but these shadows right here, this is called Entitled, and this one right here is called Ocean Ice. Those are two of the most insanely pigmented shimmer blue eyeshadows on the market, and they are absolutely fantastic. Now we have another palette from Bella & Co. This is the Express Yourself Volume 2 palette. I love this palette just because there are so many color options. If you want something colorful, you have this bottom section. If you want something more wearable and neutral, you have the top. Plus there are a lot of shimmers and loose glitters and a little mirror. I think the palette size could have been a lot larger and maybe take away a few of the shadows, but overall, a solid palette. Alrighty, we are on stack 3 of 4. We're getting there, we're halfway through it. So now you're gonna start really seeing some cool palettes. Also, side note, right now, while you're still watching this video, comment down below based on what products you've seen me use in my tutorials or photos or whatever, anything else on my channel, which palette do you think will be number 1, 2, and 3? I would love to know your thoughts. I've done a lot of reviews lately, so what have you seen that you think might be number 1, number 2, or number 3? Okay, now we have the ABH Norvina Volume 1 palette. I love this when it came out because the colors, I'm all about pinks and purples. I think it's so, so beautiful, but I don't reach for it that often, and it definitely stains my lids like no other. Now we have the JSC Mini Controversy. Again, when this came out, I thought it was pretty awesome. I don't grab for this whatsoever, but I like to have it in my collection. Next, we have the Morphe 35M Boss Mood palette. This was on my shopping list for a long time, and it was gifted to me by one of my subscribers, so thank you, thank you. I love the colors, especially the greens, the purples, and like in the burgundy reds. I think they're gorgeous, and there are a lot of options when it comes to color combinations. I have a lot of Morphe palettes, side note, because I love them and they're high quality. Next, we have the Morphe 18A Blew Ya Away palette. I used this quite a lot previously, especially around winter last year. I think it's beautiful, a lot of blues, and the performance is Next, we have a newer palette to my collection. This is the Sigma Corderosa palette. Super beautiful. That's why I don't like these types of palettes. Super beautiful. The colors are great. Love the burgundies, the mauves, the berries. I think it's fantastic. The shimmers are great. Again, I don't like this type of palette in general. I don't like the long rectangles and the little brushes in it and the small pans. That's just not my favorite thing, but the formula is great, and at the end of the day, that's really what matters most. Next, from Doe Color, we have the Shadow Book. Now, I thought this was so cool because it's literally a book. Now, this actually has 38 shadows, 8 highlights, 4 blushes, and 4 bronzers. It's inspired by medieval magic books. It has all the tricks you need for modern makeup. So it literally just slides out like this, and there's 2 palettes in it. So you have neutrals, you have blushes, bronzers, and shimmers in this one. And then there are pressed pigments, mind you. And then it opens up, and then you have more of the colorful side of everything. but like how absolutely cool is that? And aesthetically, it's very pleasing. Next up, another JSC palette. This is the Thirsty palette. This is one of those palettes where I just wanted it in my collection, but I've only used it once and it was fine. I really just bought it for these two blues and the silver at the top, and those are the only colors that I used from it. Next, we have the iconic Makeup Geek Neutral Matrix palette. Now you're like, Cody, there's colors in there. Let me explain. So there were a ton of other neutrals, obviously, in this first row, and then those three. I just got rid of them because I already have all the other colors that I really needed, and I put my power pigments in here. So overall, though, the formula is great. They're very, very intense as far as pigmentation. Everything blends like a dream, and Makeup Geek is very, very high quality. Side note, you can use code CodyJ for 10% off your order still. And no, I'm not just saying that because I have a code. Their products are fantastic. Okay, the next one is another JSC palette. This is the Cremated palette. This was actually gifted to me from one of my subscribers because my mom kind of took my other one. I kind of gifted it to her, but that's besides the point. So when I first saw this, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, but actually I love this and I've created some of the most beautiful looks. And I actually used Angel of Death, the shimmer right here, on top of a black liquid lipstick, and it was perfection. Next, we have the OG Blood Sugar palette from Jeffree Star Cosmetics. Again, packaging is top notch. Love this, love the colors. I used this so much when I first started out. I definitely want to use this a little bit more now that I'm better with my eyeshadow and makeup overall. Just kind of revisit it and kind of give it another chance. Then we have the Morphe 24A Artist Pass palette. I really love this palette. Love all the colors. I really bought this just for the spotlight stealer right here. All these tiny little stars in it, if you could see them. Yeah, how cool is that? For me, with my hooded eyes, it's kind of difficult to wear them, but when you get them to stick on, it's fantastic. Next, we have the Morphe 1971 Coca-Cola palette. I use this every time I did my makeup for like 3 weeks. I loved the neutrals in it. It made for the best glam makeup moment. And next, we have the Makeup Geek Color Matrix palette. Again, so amazing. The shimmers are absolutely fantastic. They are a cream hybrid shimmer, so they just glide on. They're very smooth and creamy. And for me and my hooded eyes, it just makes it perform so well and last all day. Everything about this palette is literally perfect. Whew. The bitch is hungry after going through all these palettes. I'm just hungry. Anyway, we are on our fourth and final stack of our eyeshadow palettes. Hopefully you're all sticking with me this whole time. Again, please leave me your feedback in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about these palettes. What do you love? What do you not love? What do you want to try out? So next we have the Jawbreaker palette from Jeffree Star Cosmetics. I thought this entire collection and the aesthetic was so cool, but then it was stolen from him from Huda Beauty, but that's besides the point. Again, the colors were so beautiful. This was like a bubblegum version, in my opinion, of like a rainbow palette. I just thought it was like, it's like an alternative rainbow palette. Super cute, love the shadows. The formula, for some reason, I don't know, it didn't work as great for me as I thought it was gonna be, but overall, I do really like the palette. I just don't reach for it that often. Next, we have the Morphe X Lisa Frank palette. I really like this one a lot. So people were saying it was kind of chalky or whatever. I never get any chalkiness with Morphe shadows, so I don't know what they're talking about. This palette was very blendable, it's very pigmented, and it performed very well. The colors are great, and I don't know who Lisa Frank is. People like kind of told me who she was, but like, I don't know who she is. But they say that this is perfect as far as like her, so cool. Okay, next we have the Nomad Cosmetics Shanghai palette. The aesthetic was cool. I've been to Shanghai, I love Shanghai, would love to go back. Color story, fantastic. Then we have the Morphe X Jeffree Star palette. I love the strawberry setting spray, side note. I actually won this in a giveaway. Love it, colors are great. These ones, like right here, didn't perform that well for me, but all these ones, the pinks and the reds, performed pretty well. Now we have the Jeffree Star Cosmetics Blood Money palette. This is the last JSC palette. Super cool, like the little faux crocodile skin, and the hardware is just so cool. It definitely screams money. I can remember how to open it, my gosh. I love this palette because I am obsessed with greens. There are so many variations of greens in here, and I like the added blues over on the side just because it definitely ties it together on like the green spectrum. I actually did a series where I did as many combos of these greens as I could, and it was a great series and the looks turned out fantastic. Next we have the Be Perfect Carnival XL Pro palette. This was one of my favorite palettes for the longest time. I could not pick another palette to use. I always went back to this palette. Super pigmented, super bright, bold, beautiful, so many combinations. Like whether you want wearable, neutral, glam, smoky, colorful, purple, sunset, you have everything. Plus you have these over here where you can use these as highlighters. Love that, I use this one a lot. Yeah, no complaints about this palette whatsoever. Next we have the Jaclyn Hill Volume 2 palette. I love this palette. The sunset looks or sunrise looks that you can make out of it are everything. And I did some of the most beautiful, in my own opinion, like red, orange, yellow, fiery looks, like halo eyeshadow looks. Oh, So fantastic. Next we have a palette I was like super obsessed with. This is the Morphe 35S Sweet Oasis eyeshadow palette. I love this. The tones of the blues are perfect. The pinks, purples, and mauves are fantastic. I've not really used a lot of the lighter ones just because I like more of an intense color with my eyeshadow, but these were everything. These didn't use, these, yes. Okay, we are down to our final 2 eyeshadow palettes, and if you haven't guessed what they are yet, I'll give you about 4 seconds to do so. Okay, so coming in number 2 is the iconic, revolutionary, if you will, Blend Bunny Cosmetics Blends eyeshadow palette. Now, if you have been on my social media or my YouTube for even like the last 6 months or so, like around the time that this came out, you would know that I use this for like every look and every TikTok live I did every day. I couldn't put it down. Even though it doesn't look like I touch it because I'm very gentle with my shadows, I have used every single shadow in this palette. The layout is fantastic. The aesthetic is fantastic. The colors are intense. They're blendable. There's literally nothing wrong with these. The pan size is great. The price point is great. Overall, everything is flawless. I have 0 complaints. Okay, little drum roll, please. The number 1 eyeshadow palette in my collection is the new Blend Bunny Cosmetics Surge eyeshadow palette. And some of you definitely should have called this one from the beginning. This palette is everything. This is like a stepped up version of the Blends palette. So you still have lots of bright colors, lots of vibrancy, and there's something for everybody. So you literally can't look at this palette and be like, there's not a color in there for me. You have pastels, you have more intensely colored shadows, you have grungy shadows, you have the most beautiful shimmers you've ever seen in your life, and they perform exceptionally well. And you also have UV reactive neon shadows here at the bottom. There's literally something for everybody. And again, the layout, you can have quads of them. So these 4 would go together, these 4 would go together, these 4 go together, and so on and so forth. Anything you want is in this palette. And again, the packaging, hello, like how cool is that? We love the continuity between them with the logo and everything, but this is just like a stepped up version of Blends, and I'm obsessed with this. So I definitely have a lot of looks that I have in mind with this palette that I still want to create, so be on the lookout for those. Whew. That is all 50 of my current eyeshadow palettes ranked from least favorite to most favorite. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up down below. Click that big red subscribe button so you can join my YouTube family. Turn on my video post notifications by clicking that bell icon and switching it to all. And I thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have the day you deserve.